importante de procesos como este que hemos vivido, que logramos diferenciar cuál es el límite entre aquellos que se dicen de progresistas, etcétera, y los que van más allá, los que creen en un proyecto de izquierda, un proyecto revolucionario, los que respetan la soberanía de los países, los que utilizan a Venezuela para asuntos internos. Yo no puedo dudar, por ejemplo, que en Chile el presidente Boric está utilizando a Venezuela para desviar su propia catástrofe. El mundo, cuando ve que hay un proceso que va contracorriente de su interés, se va a enfocar en atacarlo. Los medios, que no son más que las herramientas para mantener el status quo de ese mundo capitalista, se van a enfocar en atacar a ese proceso para frenarlo, para neutralizarlo. La tarea nuestra, insisto, humildemente, es seguir adelante y realmente no detenernos a pensar ni siquiera lo que piensan algunos gobiernos que ideológicamente pudiesen ser cercanos a la revolución bolivariana y que en este momento están recibiendo presiones de Washington, presiones de las grandes corporaciones internacionales, o que deciden utilizar a Venezuela para salvar sus responsabilidades y distraer a la opinión pública de los asuntos internos en su país.
Welcome to the Jaybe Show on Revolutionary Blackout Network. So good to see all of you here on this Sunday afternoon. The Jaybe Show is every single Sunday at 1 p.m. on RBN, and you can also see me on my channel, the Jaybe Font channel, on Tuesdays at 2 p.m. If you have not already, please go ahead and give a like. This helps us out very much. Thank you so very much to all of you. Also, if you have not already, you guys can also get put on our mailing list at revolutionaryblackout.substack.com. This gives you email notifications whenever we go live or upload any clips. So you have that there. Any inquiries or want to submit any stories or just want to give us some encouragement is deeply appreciated. You guys can go to revolutionaryblackout@outlook.com for email inquiries and things like that. So thank you so very much. Now, what are we talking about today? So we're going to be having a guest to cover over what's going on in Venezuela. So we have two different stories we're going to be covering over today. Later in the show, we're actually going to be talking about a Social Security data breach. This is something I think is very necessary for all of us to heed warning of so that we can safeguard ourselves. So we're going to be talking about that. But first, we're going to be talking about interlopers. We're going to be talking about people like Gustavo Petro, Lula da Silva, and Antony Blinken. And we're going to be talking about the interlopers that are trying to interfere with the Venezuelan election. And we have a journalist with us, Camila Escalante, joining me right now. So good to have you on with me.
Thank you. So good to be on with you as well. Thank you so much for having me come and share my thoughts about what's going on in Venezuela.
Yes, definitely. So we were essentially listening on the outset to Jorge
Ariaza.
Ariaza, yes. So speaking about Venezuela and the West's push to interfere with their electoral system. And so I know Nick on RBN and I have spoken about as well. I've actually interviewed Fiorella Isabel about the elections in Venezuela and what the United States really has been trying to do to interfere with that. So if you can just give a more 40,000-foot blanket explanation to some of our viewers that may not be abreast of this information.
Yeah, well, that was a really, I think, good soundbite to begin with. Jorge Ariaza, who is currently the Secretary General of ALBA TCP, the Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of Our America. And he formerly was for many years the foreign minister of Venezuela during the most difficult years, now being a very difficult time as well. But he was the foreign minister, let's say in 2017, until 2021, approximately. And that was when Venezuela was in the same type of siege, both in the media, both economically, when the bulk of those 900 unilateral coercive measures were imposed on Venezuela that we call sanctions, largely by the United States and its allies, which is currently sanctioning about 36 countries in a manner which is unilateral, which is illegal, and which punishes the people of those countries. And so he was out defending the honor of the Venezuelan people against this aggression, all sorts of aggression, but of course, the slander that was taking part against Venezuela. We had people making remarks, obviously at the Organization of American States, at the UN, but mostly from places like the EU and places that really have nothing to do with Venezuela, and certainly don't care about the interests of the Venezuelan people, just like the State Department doesn't care about the Venezuelan people. And so, what he was saying is that despite what in this clip by that was put together by People's Dispatch, he was saying, despite what other countries may say, some of them are supposed to be our allies, they're our neighbors. We have to look inward. We have to depend on and support our democratic institutions in the country, because they're the ones who are going to have the final word. This doesn't have anything to do with any of these other countries. And quite frankly, these other countries have their own electoral systems to look after. They have their own political crises. They have all sorts of different issues going on. I mean, we're talking about a world system that's divided into states of something like 200 countries, all sorts of things going on all across the world. And when things happen in Venezuela and it becomes a media circus, it seems as if no other country has ever dealt with poverty. They make it seem in the media as if no other country has ever had riots, has ever had police coming to control those riots, has ever had political dissent or opposition leaders. All sorts of things happen all across the world all of the time. And for some reason, they're absolutely obsessed with Venezuela specifically. And so for at least the last 3 weeks, Venezuela has once again been in the headlines all across the world. But it's not because things aren't happening in other countries. It's because the United States has a very specific vested interest in this country and its resources, particularly its oil. And at a time when obviously we're facing all sorts of changes and a realignment of power around the world, and the US is losing its grip on the world. It's losing its influence over Latin America and the Caribbean and the global South in general. And other powers are becoming more influential and more important for the future of our world. And those powers, as you know, are, for example, the BRIC countries and the new BRIC countries, I guess, because it's now been expanded, led by China, Russia, Iran, South Africa, pardon me, and many others that are just far more relevant for our world. And Venezuela is one of the countries, among others. Some of the others are the other ALBA TCP countries that are looking to other nations of the South for trade, for collaboration, for relationships that need to be expanded in a way that's mutually beneficial for all of our peoples, and that will actually help us economically and help improve the material conditions of the lives of regular people. That's really what we need. We don't need to be held hostage, and we don't need to be dominated, and we don't need to be enslaved in the 21st century as we have been so long. We've been living in constantly for hundreds of years now in a state of underdevelopment, which is deliberate, and in a state in which we're having our resources ransacked and stolen from us in all of our countries of Latin America and the Caribbean. And some of these countries and their governments and their leaders are happy to be under this neo-colonial scheme. They're happy to have all of their resources extracted from the country and taken away by foreign capital, by these other states and governments who come to swoon them for absolutely nothing. And they're selling their self off, auctioning it off for absolutely nothing. And in return, the people get absolutely nothing. They don't get infrastructure. They don't get better services. They don't get social programs. Their lives aren't going to improve. They're actually just getting robbed. And they continue to be part of the system of exploitation in which people are working for very low salaries. They're working for pennies. That's one of the greatest problems in all of the global South and in Latin America specifically, is that our salaries remain low. Things are really cheap. Our labor is very cheap in comparison to that of the global north. So it's a really bad deal that we have. And Venezuela is one of the main powers of the world. It's not this powerful country like China or like the United States or like some European powers, but it's one of the most important ones that's actually working to change that system. That's saying we had to have a revolution 25 years ago, led by our commander, Hugo Chavez. And we're changing the system within our country, regardless of what the neighbors are doing, regardless of what Guyana and Suriname are doing, what Colombia is doing, what Brazil is doing. They have their own system. But this is what's happening in Venezuela. They're implementing their own sovereign model, and they're helping the neighbors through things like Petrocaribe, through medical cooperation. They're obviously always in cooperation with Cuba, and to help other countries of, for example, ALBA TCP and those 5 members, which are Caribbean, of the Eastern Caribbean states, helping those countries and others who are not even members of ALBA TCP be able to empower themselves. And at some point, the idea would be to have, what they need to be able to say no to the empire, to say no to ongoing domination. That's what Venezuela would like to do. It's to help themselves, help the people come out of poverty, and improve the quality of life, and then also share that ability, empower other peoples of the global South to do that as well. And they have lots of resources. So that's not okay. That's not acceptable for the United States. And so what we're seeing today is another coup attempt, another attempt to destabilize the country and prepare the country, create the conditions for a coup in one way or another. We don't know exactly, if they have new plans, but what we do know is that we're seeing the same template, features and elements of the same template that we've seen applied time and time again being applied today. It's just a repeat. They've done the same thing. Some of the same things that we're seeing play out today, we saw in 2019 in Bolivia when the coup took place against Evo Morales, and in Nicaragua when they tried to destabilize with the terrorism and what we call the guarimbas of Nicaragua of April 2018. We're seeing the same thing in Venezuela, and the Venezuelans know this because they saw it themselves in many years past.
Yeah, and just for some background information, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but before a lot of these heavier sanctions that can't come on, after the revolution of Hugo Chavez, one of the things that he implemented was he nationalized the oil in the country of Venezuela, and then used sale from oil in order to implement large, vast, sweeping social programs that uplifted everyone. And because of him doing that, and because of the nationalization of the oil industry, the United States didn't like that. Well, really in particular, the Exxons, the BPs, and all these different oil giants who actually own the United States didn't like that. So they placed sanctions upon them, which also essentially, degraded the living conditions of the Venezuelan people, a lot like what they did with Cuba, as a means to get the Venezuelan people to rise up against their government to implement more of a free market capitalist type of system, even though the system that Hugo Chavez and his administration had put in was actually working for the people. And so now they're trying to do the same thing to Nicolas Maduro, because he's carrying on that Bolivarian revolution. And so they still are like, well, here you got somebody else that's just like Hugo Chavez that's trying to do the same thing, and we have to get rid of them so that we can actually own the oil, not the people. And so, this is a change. They're trying to change the guard, so to speak, what's going on in there, just like what they try to do with Evo Morales in Bolivia, similar to what they did to Salvador Allende and Chile, in many different countries. Like, for instance, they did that with Mohammed Mossadegh, right, in Afghanistan. So Is that more or less correct? Am I correct on those facts?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, unfortunately, about a year ago, or whenever the Argentine elections was, Javier Milei, who is one of the current coup leaders and the influencers who has a lot of traction right now, who is leading this new coup attempt from the exterior against the Bolivarian Revolution, against Venezuela, was elected to power in Argentina through the vote. And this is, we can look at, like, there's a number of reasons why you might I guess, analyze the election turnout. People maybe were unhappy with the lack of successes of the supposed center left in the country, but they voted in this person. Well, what Javier Milei offers to the empire is that he has offered in very rapid time a model in which anyone can come in from the exterior and bid for Argentina's resources. And that money is simply not going to be benefiting the people of Argentina. The situation there is so extreme. It's an unbelievable case. If someone were to be looking at grad school right now, or a thesis or something to study, that would be a very interesting case. If someone is interested in political economy, is interested in neoliberalism in Latin America, because this is a perfect case. Not putting aside, him being characterized or as like a fascist or far right or social politics or anything like that. But economically, what he's doing is really destructive for the country. And right now, they continue to have the issues with inflation. Their currency is really messed up. It means that if you want to send $100 to your friend or family member in Argentina right now, you have to decide what $100 is. Now, in a normal country, like let's say Nicaragua, because that's a country I'm familiar with since I live in Nicaragua, you would send a very specific amount of money in Cordoba, which is the currency. And whether you sent it last month or next month, that is the money that you're going to send. And that person, your family member, is going to receive $100. In Argentina, there are so many different exchange rates that people use. And it just doesn't make any sense. The currency is valued at nothing. And then that's in addition to what I was saying, which is that they're in this process of liberalizing the economy so that anyone can go in, whether it be a private company, whether it be a foreign government, and bid for the resources of the country. They go, whether, through some agreement to bring in their own experts, their own personnel, or Argentina does it, whatever. They dig it up, they take it out. So they have the resources, they're able to sell the resources themselves. What is Argentina and the Argentine people getting out of it? Who knows? Very little. I can tell you that much for sure. And what this will create is a bunch of people leaving the country, because we've seen this in places like Ecuador, where people are just doing very poorly. There's no work. People are not earning enough for the work that they do, and so they have to migrate for economic opportunity. Unfortunately, in the news, you don't see it covered as that. You only see the angle that people are leaving because of communism, and it seems as if they want to make it seem that people are only leaving from 3 countries, which is Nicaragua, Venezuela, and Cuba, when in fact people leave because of economic reasons from the global south all of the time. The difference is that in the United States, they're actually luring people from Venezuela, Cuba, and Nicaragua. In the case of Nicaragua, you can actually go to the Department of Homeland Security online, and you usually get somebody who's some sort of not a lawyer, but somebody who does like immigration papers for you, and they apply for you, and you just get accepted. They're just allowing Nicaraguans to go. You're not really losing a lot of money. You just go, and then you go on a plane, and then you go to the US. So it's kind of, they're luring people away, because objectively, let's say that on the lower end of the scale, you can make $2,000 a month working at a coffee shop in the United States. Well, nowhere in Latin America are you making $2,000 a month. So yeah, of course, people would want to go and try it out to see if they can make a little more money, to send a little money to their families. But it is actually, neoliberalism is actually creating huge problems for people and our development and our well-being in our continent. I'm getting away from your original question, but it's just the model that the United States and the empire and its allies would like to implement throughout Latin America is that which is being currently implemented in countries like Argentina, like Ecuador. And in addition to liberalizing the economy and denationalizing things that had once been nationalized industries and companies, they're also doing a lot of new security cooperation. And they have all sorts of Southcom, U.S. military advisors, but also police and other security advisors down there in these countries, training the troops, and they're dropping in all sorts of security equipment and donations. And they're also building new military bases for their own use in future wars or whatever it is. So they're really trying to regain influence and domination over these countries as other countries continue to defend their sovereignty. So it's a really sort of like polarized situation. We have the countries like Venezuela who are defending their sovereignty once again against US interference and foreign meddling. And then you have these countries that are quite literally delivering their territories and their sovereignty to the hands of the empire. So it's two completely separate models. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, I'm trying to be responsible. But one of the things I want to bring up actually as well is post-Venezuelan election, Anthony Blinken, had this to say as well, and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
If my colleagues will indulge me for just 1 minute, I want to speak quickly to the elections that just took place in Venezuela. We applaud the Venezuelan people for their participation in the July 28th presidential election. We commend their courage and commitment to democracy in the face of repression and in the face of adversity.
What aggression and what adversity is he talking about? Wait, hold on. My question is, do we face aggression and adversity whenever we vote here in the United States?
Yeah. So here's the thing. If they're talking about repression, and if by repression they're referring to detentions and arrests that are happening in Venezuela, I think it's really important to put that in the context of the fact that if you go on social media right now to the pages of the right-wing Venezuelan opposition influencers that are spewing all of this disinformation and everything, but they're also just saying the truth, which is they have admitted every day that they're working with private military contractors. They're working with foreign mercenaries. And they're working with someone named Eric Prince, among many others, who was the founder of Blackwater, and other armed paramilitaries, for example, those in Colombia, to try to figure out a way to take out this government. They've done so many times before because President Nicolas Maduro has in past years been the target of many assassination attempts. The most notable one, I guess, would be in August 2018, now 6 years ago, when he was, on Avenida Libertador, and he was standing there in some sort of a military parade, and there was a drone attack on him, which we now know was planned by the Venezuelan opposition. All sorts of people were arrested for that and all of that, but they're doing it once again. And so people need to necessarily be arrested. There needs to be some sort of a sweep in any country of the world when you have people who have come out and admitted to acting as foreign agents, admitted to committing acts of treason against their country, and have admitted to plotting things that would be characterized as terrorism or just completely illegal in every country of the world. Certainly, if someone's admitting these things, unfortunately, most of the people and the accounts who have admitted this and who are calling for a military invasion, because they are, once again, are in Miami, and they're in Bogota, and they're in Washington, and they're in Madrid and places like that. They're not in Venezuela. So they're saying whatever they want to say. But so they're making all of these statements about what they're doing. They have admitted to carrying out thousands of cyber attacks and what is cyber terrorism, because these are illegal, completely illegal in any part of the world, actions that are being taken against government institutions and government web pages of the different ministries and institutions and state media outlets. And they're taking down pages. So on the one hand, we have Nicolas Maduro, the president, and his cabinet accusing them of doing that. On the other hand, they're admitting to doing it. And of course, you have people like Anthony Blinken who make it seem as if the government lies. They just say all this is blah, blah. It's propaganda from Washington, from Russia. They always say that it's propaganda. But in fact, the opposition has been very clear about what their intentions are. Their intentions are to overthrow this government, whether it be by the government stepping down on its own, whether it be by an assassination attempt, whether it be by taking this guy and taking the president and taking him off to the United States, or whatever it is. But the opposition is working very closely with Washington. So, when Blinken says things like this, he is always doing it in consultation with the opposition. These statements are just purely political. They're diplomatic, they're calculated. But ultimately what they're working towards is, they've already said that Edmundo Gonzalez has won the majority of the votes. The United States claims that he's the winner. But come January, there needs to be inauguration. And President Nicolas Maduro will be there to be re-inaugurated, having won the elections of July 28th. But unfortunately, what we're expecting to see once again, as we saw in 2019, is that in January, the opposition, strangely enough, in one way or another, will do their own type of inauguration. And what they're preparing is they're in the process of preparing their parastate, their parallel institutions, their parallel office of the presidency, their parallel Supreme Court. They did all of this during those years, 2017 to 2020, when they installed someone as a supposed president, the president of Narnia, who only existed seriously on Twitter, really, and didn't control anything in the country. He was simply the 2015 president of the National Assembly. And because he was that, the United States decided that he could be president of the country. They're going to try doing that again with Edmundo. The weird thing is that Edmundo is nowhere to be found. He's kind of like in hiding. And the face of the opposition during the whole campaign, but also since the election, has been far-right leader of the Venezuelan opposition, Maria Corina Machado. She's the one who came out to the streets yesterday and spoke to the thousands of followers of hers there on Avenida Francisco Miranda and Altamira, the upscale neighborhood. And she has been the one who's rallying everyone and doing all the social media and everything else. But he's supposed to be the president-elect, according to them. So it's a very bizarre thing, because he's the one who's going to need to be, according to them, inaugurated. But she's the one who appears. So I'm not sure how this is all going to play out. But in any way, it's still the same template that we saw 5 years ago.
Yeah, the spirit of Juan Guaido is upon he's upon them. Let me just share this as well, because you were talking about about Eric Prince, and you guys really need to know who this guy is. Eric Prince said this not too long ago.
Venezuela, resiste juntos por la libertad, la unidad y la paz. My friends, be well today with the protests. I wish you peace and safety. Your friends from the north, though we're not with you today, we're coming soon. We support you to the end.
This guy, Eric Prince, is basically the CEO and owner of Blackwater, which is basically a paramilitary a mercenary group. So when the United States doesn't want to get their hands dirty, they'll hire companies owned by that guy in order to commit war crimes so that the United States has plausible deniability and goes, hey, we didn't do it. We had nothing to do with what they did. They're a private group. But the thing is, who hired them? Also, just to let you guys know, Eric Prince is the brother of Betsy DeVos. Who is Betsy DeVos? That name probably rings a bell in your head, right? Betsy DeVos was the Secretary of Education under Donald Trump. So it's all one big club, and you ain't in it. And I think that's something that a lot of people really need to keep in mind, is that all these administrations, whether it be the Bush administration, Obama administration, Trump administration, Biden administration, they're all connected in the same goal that they're trying to do in really increasing this hegemony across the world. And so I want to finish what Antony Blinken was saying, though he can be insufferable many times, and so I do apologize. But I do want to finish what Blinken has said as well. So,
presidential election. We commend their courage and commitment to democracy in the face of repression and in the face of adversity. We've seen the announcement just a short while ago by the Venezuelan Electoral Commission. We have serious concerns that the result announced does not reflect the will or the votes of the Venezuelan people. It's critical that every vote be counted fairly and transparently, that election officials immediately share information with the opposition and independent observers without delay, and that the electoral authorities publish the detailed tabulation of votes. The international community is watching this very closely and will respond accordingly.
now, as far as the international community responding, have been some who responded.
Can I just add one thing going back to the mercenary thing?
Mhm.
Blackwater is just one. It's just one group, but at the same time, the context is that there is this growing mercenary industry in Latin America and the world, much of which probably certainly has connections to Washington. And a lot of it has been based out of the far right narcos and narco state leaders of the past of Colombia. So they have a lot of people enlisted who are from Colombia, who are of all different backgrounds. In Miami now, we have people who are ex-Marines who live in Miami and who have been deployed all over the world. And these are some of the people who are watching right now what's happening in Venezuela to see how they can actually profit off of this situation and all of the antagonism against Venezuela. Eric Prince, one of the other things he tweeted out 2 weeks ago was that the United States, he tagged Biden and the Vice President Kamala Harris, saying that they should up the money that's being offered, the bounties for President Nicolas Maduro and the Chavista leader, one of the leaders of the PSUV, Diosdado Cabello, saying that if they increase that offering, that bounty, then you can just see the magic happen, that someone will come and take that money and take these leaders out. One of the other things that happened, apart from that drone attack on President Maduro in August 2018, was that in, I believe, April 2020, was the mercenary incursion that was led by like 3 mercenaries from the United States and other Colombian paramilitaries who came in from Colombia off the coast, I guess you could say the Caribbean coast of Venezuela, and they just showed up on the shore of Venezuela, and they were caught by Venezuelan fishermen. But these people also were part of a plan to take out President Nicolas Maduro, and they were going to kidnap the first, well, in the U.S., I guess you would call the first lady, but they call it the first combatant, who's also a legislator, an important lawyer in the country, Celia Flores, and many other high-ranking government and Chavista leaders and officials during that plan. So we've already seen these connections that the United States has to these different mercenary networks and the way in which they're involved. But I'll let you go on.
Yeah, of course. Thank you very much for that analysis. Let me also go here because I wanted to also share about what people like President Lula da Silva actually said. Lula da Silva really has done a disservice to Venezuela. And so, unfortunately, I don't speak Spanish or Portuguese, but this caption says, breaking news, Lula suggests the idea of forming a coalition government that integrates Chavismo and the opposition in Venezuela or new presidential elections. He said Maduro has 6 months left in office. If he had common sense, he could even call for new elections. My thing is, like, if the election was free and fair and it already called for Nicolas Maduro, then why in the world would you need to call for new elections? And why is somebody like Lula da Silva following suit of what the United States and particularly Antony Blinken is directing? Because I thought that they were, had good relations with Venezuela.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think there could be some possible different hypotheses or theories on what has been taking place behind the scenes. I think it's very difficult to know what the talks really are. Unfortunately, as a journalist, people have to know that we can speculate all we want. We have all of our contacts. You have contacts who themselves are diplomats. You know these great analysts that you speak to all the time. But there are things that are being decided in ways that we don't know. To be frank, there are negotiations always taking place between certain, for example, actors of the opposition and the government itself and the government of Washington. Remember that on several occasions in the past few years, Venezuela has actually had talks with Washington, and things were decided, and we only found out after the fact. So we don't really know what's going on. We know that these three countries, to include Mexico as well, they put out two statements about the elections in which they seem to try to find some sort of middle ground. So they're not among the countries who obviously support and respect completely Venezuela's sovereignty and self-determination in their own elections and institutions as other countries. And they're not a part of these countries who are passing resolutions at the OAS Permanent Council and putting out all these statements as the one that they put out on Fridays from Santo Domingo. But they want to make it seem as if they're trying to be, I guess, the middlemen to try to find some sort of solution. It's not helpful. I mean, unless they have some sort of plan or something that they're trying to do to try to bring different parties together, which has been attempted so many times. And, has been attempted and has been attended by the opposition in such bad faith. I don't really see, what is behind this. I don't know. It could be genius. And we find out later that they really are just going to stand up for Venezuela. Or it's just like a big fail. It's hard to say, honestly, because like I said, a lot of things are happening that we don't know about. But objectively, the statements that have been made by Lula and Petro are they're arrogant, they're pompous, and they're exceptionalist, because it means that they believe that no other country that has held elections during their mandates have ever been asked to show the electoral tally sheets, the electoral minutes. This just has never been a request of any government. Certainly, I've never seen Lula or Petro ask any other government of the world or any other country and their electoral institutions to come forward and show the data and documentation of their elections in order for them to decide that, in fact, the government had been elected. That just doesn't happen. It only happens in the case of Venezuela. It's completely absurd. And what's even weirder is that these are supposed to be progressive governments. It's progressive governments that have singled out one of the only countries in our region which is fighting for to maintain its revolutionary process, but also fighting for the sovereignty of all other and independence of all other countries of our region and trying to empower them as well. The only reason why Petro has been able to sustain himself in power, the only reason why these countries are able to take these daring positions on things like Palestine, things like the special military operation in Ukraine, everything else, is because of how difficult these three revolutions, and maybe you can add Bolivia in addition to that, have stood their ground on so many issues, and that they've really guarded anti-imperialism and socialism in our continent for so long, despite the unwavering, relentless attacks from the exterior. So it's really puzzling. And, I don't want to be the one who is fixated on someone else's government. I also know that a lot of Venezuelans, frankly, don't care what these leaders have to say. But I do know that a lot of people in Colombia and particularly in Brazil have really been critical of Lula and Petro for these statements. There has been a lot of analysis, a lot of programs and things where social movement leaders and other intellectuals have said that this is simply not acceptable, that these leaders go and try to really just what they're doing is intervening just the same as all the rest of the countries by making all of these demands and making all these claims about an election and a country that has nothing to do with them. Their own job is to look after their own countries. And if you have some time, if we have a minute, I wouldn't mind if you put on, what we should have led with, which was the massive mobilizations that took place yesterday in all of Venezuela. The last tweet from Calcetrin News is one of the interviews we did on the streets of Caracas. We have interviewed a number of people who attended this large mobilization of Chavistas in the capital. And, they're saying that the people are saying that they're defending their revolution, their president, and that, quite frankly, the other governments have nothing to do with it. They say, to those who are asking for the electoral minutes, take care of your own country, take care of your own electoral system. And they're essentially telling everyone to fuck off. And that's what's been so inspiring about, the Venezuelan people is that, they're mobilizing against fascism. They're very clear that it's against fascism. It's against foreign intervention. It's against U.S. imperialism. They literally say that. And they truly believe, as you can see in the sound bites of the people that we have interviewed, they believe in inclusion, they believe in equality, and they're determined to. There's one that was posted. The most recent one that was posted is a gentleman who talks about the elections a little bit. That one.
Okay. All right. Let's take a look at this.
Luis Ochoa, estamos aquí en las calles nuevamente para ratificar la victoria de nuestro comandante Nicolás Maduro, obtenida el 28 de julio. Este país somos los hijos de Chávez, somos los hijos de Venezuela que estamos en la calle en contra del fascismo y terrorismo que han querido implantar los lacayos del imperio a través de María Corina Machado y el Mundo Urrutia. Son unos asesinos. Ellas vienen propulsando la violencia en este país por más de 25 años y hemos resistido y seguiremos resistiendo. Somos ejemplo ante el mundo y la resistencia contra los imperios norteamericanos más grandes del mundo. Nosotros seguiremos en la lucha revolucionaria, aunque en nuestros países hay países hermanos en la América Latina que hoy en día están tomados por el fascismo y los lacayos como son Argentina con Milei, Perú, Ecuador, que están siendo gobernados por el terrorismo del imperio norteamericano. Nosotros seguiremos aquí apoyando a nuestro líder Nicolás Maduro, siguiendo el legado de nuestro comandante Hugo Chávez y de Simón Bolívar. Hoy en día somos más bolivarianos que nunca y estaremos, igual que Bolívar, defendiendo la patria grande. Cuando quiera y en el terreno que quiera, nosotros estaremos en la calle. Todas aquellas personas que dicen que no hubo fraude y estos países, como lo vuelvo a repetir, Argentina, Perú, Ecuador, Lula, Brasil, que han dicho, no conocen nuestro sistema Nuestro sistema es uno de los más seguros del mundo. Nosotros es auditado antes, durante y después. Aquellas personas que quieren actas, que quieren, ocúpense de su país, vayan a su país, cómo se hace una elección en su país fraudulenta. Aquí no se hacen elecciones con copia, aquí se hacen con boletas y voto a voto. Aquí estamos nosotros presentes en pie de lucha, nuestros hermanos. Aquí está Venezuela, que será el ejemplo para el mundo y seguiremos siendo una piedra en el zapato para el imperio norteamericano.
Strong words.
Yeah, going back to what you were saying about Blinken's comments about, supposed repression and adversity. I mean, they like to talk about in the United States. They like to talk about censorship. They love talking about freedom of the press, freedom of expression. This is kind of their line whenever they're attacking these countries of the global South. Quite frankly, I have been astounded when it comes to the extent to which Venezuela allows foreign news agencies to operate in their country, accredited by the Ministry of Communication. The reason why we get so many images in the mainstream corporate press around the world of the opposition marches and the opposition speeches and all the different things they're doing all the time is because AFP, AP, Reuters, FA, BBC, and all of those other news agencies and outlets and TV channels are accredited in the country, and they're allowed to do whatever they want. So there, if you see the press conferences, the international press conferences held at Miraflores Palace with the president, he invites them to come hear from him, but they on their off time, when they're just doing whatever they want to do, 40 hours a week, Monday to Friday, they're producing this anti-government propaganda. And the government has never done anything to crack down on this media. It's absolutely astounding to me. So there's absolutely no, issue with that. So these outlets simply are not showing what's going around the country. What happened yesterday was that in 100 cities, Chavismo mobilized in support of their government and their president, Nicolas Maduro. And we didn't see the images anywhere. We only have, Casacha News only has camera people on the ground in Caracas. It's just the easiest place to get people to collaborate. It's, but in the States, if you watch actual Venezuelan media, you might see that they were mobilizing in cities across all of the states of the country. I was watching VTV just this morning, the state broadcasting channel, and they showed images of the mobilizations in Guárico and the state of Amazonas and Barinas and La Guaira and all other states. And we're talking about like a single state will have like 6 different cities that had mobilizations similar to the one that took place in Caracas yesterday. So that's not being seen anywhere.
Yeah. And before I let you go, I just want to add this really quick point as well, because there was an interview with Nicolas Maduro about this. Of course, I don't have time right now, but people like AMLO of Mexico actually said that we need to be prudent and let the Venezuelans handle their own election. So that was good. Yeah. But I just want to share this right quick with Nicolas Maduro. He's asked, he comes off hot, and it's like, I love the hood side of Nicolas Maduro coming out. He said, well, first of all, Venezuela, it has the sovereignty of an independent country with a constitution. It has its institutions, and conflicts in Venezuela of any kind are solved among Venezuelans with their institutions, with their law, and with their constitution. He said, I do not practice megaphone diplomacy, and I will never practice it, because imagine that if you become an advisor to other countries. No. He said, former President Donald Trump made very serious allegations of fraud was committed in the United States. And in the end, the United States, there was a strong conflict on J6. I got to be careful. There's an assault on Congress. And the one who ratified President Biden's victory was the United States Congress. Nobody came out in the world to tell him, look, there was fraud, do this or that. No one did that, just as it should be in the 21st century. So the question is, if it's okay for the United States to do this to Venezuela, then it's okay for all these other countries. It would be okay for DPRK, for Cuba, for China, for Russia to come in and go, hey, 2020, that election ain't it. You guys may need to do a recount, but will we accept that from these other countries, and yet we're doing that to Venezuela?
I agree. That's a really good statement to end our discussion on. It's like there's just no one else whose responsibility it is to look after the sovereign internal matters of a country like Venezuela. It's up to the Venezuelan people and their institutions to sort it out. In the case of Mexico, AMLO took so far the correct position when he's made his statements during his daily press conferences in the morning, saying that we're going to wait to see what the authorities in the country say, and those who are actually responsible for the elections and this process before we make any determinations or statements. Hopefully, the next president to be inaugurated in October, Claudia Sheinbaum, will continue what the position has been of AMLO during her mandate as well. So I think, that is the correct position for all principled people, whether you consider yourself to be some sort of anti-imperialist, some sort of a leftist, or whatever it is. But you really don't even have to be a part of any sort of classification. You just have to have basic principles, which is that these countries need to be able to deal with their own problems themselves without intervention, free of meddling, free of aggression of all types, whether it be sanctions, military aggressions, etc. And that's what Venezuela requires right now. And it's up for us, everyone on the exterior, to support that, to support them and give them the ability to sort things out and actually stand against our governments, particularly the governments of the global south, who are trying to intervene and quite literally take this government out one way or the other until they get their way. That's what we need to be fighting right now.
Thank you so very much for that deep analysis. I think this has been very educational to our audience as well as me. I just want to thank you so very much. And I kept you on a little bit longer than what I was trying, than what I anticipated, but it was needed. Thank you so very much, Camila Escalante. It was so good to have you. She is part of Saskatchewan News. I almost called it Saskatchewan, but for some reason, brain. But it's still, thank you so very much for being with us. And where can they find you, and what do you have coming up next?
You can find a lot of our sound bites and interviews and things we're doing in Venezuela on Saskatchewan News on our social media, which is primarily Instagram and Twitter. And we hope to have a new website up soon, and then you'll be able to find our stuff other places and won't have to necessarily rely on these platforms. But right now, on Twitter, we'll have some more sound bites up in the next little while from the interviews we did yesterday in Caracas.
All right. Thank you so very much. And thank you so much for coming and being with us. I cannot wait to have more conversations with you in the near future.
Thank you so much.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye. All right, everybody. So that was Miss Camila Escalante. Look, this is an ongoing situation that we need to keep our eyes on. Of course, imperialism reeks its ugly head every single time. And please keep in mind that, this was said before, but if we really want to help, these other countries, we need to keep our hands out ultimately. And by helping keep our hands out of these other countries, we're also helping ourselves too. So that also means we're not devoting unnecessary dollars to overthrow other governments. We're actually using those dollars here at home so that we can actually fix our own house, so to speak. So thank you very much for that as well. If you guys have not, please go ahead and give the stream a like. Pushes us out into the algorithm so that we can be able to reach more people and have stories like this. So while we're at it, we are going to go to the comments really quick and we're going to have a conversation and see what you guys think about what's going on. There was a lot more that I wanted to get into. There was some other facts that I wanted to get into, especially about Lula da Silva and what he did with Haiti. And really, Lula is, really just poised to behave like a U.S. puppet. There was also, I didn't have time, but there was also a hotspot video that was done by Nick already about this subject. I would implore you guys to look that up. I think it's already uploaded here on this channel. So if you guys want to, you guys can give that a look. That also gives a really quick rundown of everything that's going on that I just talked about. This was more of a nuanced conversation versus, Nick just, it's like an energy shot, when Nick does these hotspots. So if you want that energy shot, then you guys can also listen to that as well. So one of the things I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go into the Rockfin. Actually, you know what? Let me check to see if there's any Rumble rants. If we have any Rumble rants, then we'll be able to read those. But if not, then we'll just go through all the general comments, and we'll cover some Rumble comments as well. So we're going to do that in just a second. Okay, so we don't have any Rumble rants. We're good. Checking to see if we have any tips on Rockfin. No. We do have some comments on Rockfin, though, and I'll read a couple of those just to make sure that we spread the love and we are fair here. Alrighty, everybody. All right, so Drew Tex, thank you very much, says, it doesn't surprise me that Lula will follow the U.S. The dude is neoliberal after all. Indeed, Lula and Petro could have asked any country to oversee Venezuela's elections, but they chose the U.S., the country that has no respect for sovereignty. Look, Drew, you're absolutely right. And the thing is, it's like every single time there is an election that favors someone who is more anti-imperialist and socialist, the United States wants to, dig their hands in. But my question is, why didn't the United States dig their hands into Argentina, when they chose Javier Milei, right? Or why didn't they dig their hands in, in the Israeli elections? You know what I'm saying? Or why did they dig their grubby little hands into the UK elections? See what I mean? So that's one of the things a lot of times people don't think about, is that whenever a country goes the direction that the United States does not like, and they always talk about U.S. interests. Is it really U.S. interests, or is it corporate interests? Because who owns the U.S. government? Ding, 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 ding. See what I mean? So let's go into the chat. I'm going to cover the super chats first, and then we get to everybody else. Let me see. Okay, so thank you for the super sticker, James Starks. All right. Thank you very much. Mark comes in and says, imagine if the global South demanded Biden to step down and only recognize Ralph Nader as U.S. president. You know what? Part of me wants to say I wish, but at the same time, it's like I technically wouldn't want that, because I don't want other countries meddling in our electoral system. But our electoral system is, I got to choose my words very carefully on here. They're geared in such a way where it favors the corporations. I'll say it that way. And so because you have, these other nations, they're still not coming in and going, hey, you guys need to change this, or you guys need to, recount this, or hold a whole another election. That doesn't happen. And is it because our elections are more secure? No, it is not more secure. In fact, Venezuela has one of the most secure elections in the world. And somehow their elections are illegitimate? Do I look like Boo Boo the Fool? Lord, these people. All right, so let's get to the rest of the chat. Hello to Terry Connolly, says, good afternoon, JB and comrades. We have a sure coming in saying Lula and AMLO are suspicious to me because they want to invade Haiti now over gangs fighting imperialism and slavery. Yes, you can include Kenya over that too. The Kenyan president as well. A CBC voter says, happy Sunday at JB. Good to see you. Ryder in Black says, Oi Belta Lowoda. Hey, comrades. Good to see you. Ghost Art is on the Rumble side, says, Namaste. If we burn, you burn. This is fine. This is Flamingelmo. Thank you very much. Abedin says, Dolazal walks so Kamala. You know what? Sometimes not sometimes, all the time, I really love our audience. You guys just really put a smile on my face. Man, thank you for that. Thank you for that. Rondo says, JB styling these mamas with the Ralph. Thank you very much. Oh, yeah, the Ralph. Yeah. Thank you very much. Samuel coming in saying, afternoon, y'all comrades. We have Grunge coming in saying peace, and I don't know what that is, but it's cool. Syndicate says, comrades, good to see you, Syndicate. Ryder in Black says, I hate practically everyone in DNC, but I'll be damned if I stop mocking weirdos who pretending to be mixed race doesn't make you truly Black. That's a whole another conversation. Robbie Burns says, sup, y'all. Good to see you. Lucy, Blue Moon Red Wine coming in saying, deport the Gasano. oh gosh. She says, Maduro won fair and square, and if the Gasanos want to go vote next time, they should leave Miami. Deport Miami. Oh Lord. And I know we got somebody in here getting mad. You know, they're getting their tidy whities in a bunch over what's going on over there. It's like, yikes. So I'm still laughing at that other comment. There's also other ones. I wanted to ask her this, but I didn't have time. First Amendment says, Lula, not sure if BRICS will be successful. My thing is like, part of me wanted to ask about her thoughts, and maybe I can ask her when she comes back. Camila asked when she comes back. I wanted to ask her about how soon, or like a timetable when she thinks that Venezuela would join BRICS. Because if Venezuela joins BRICS, it's over. Because they are one of the largest oil producers in the world. And if you have people like, countries like Venezuela and then Saudi Arabia trying to join in BRICS, it's over. The petrodollar is really on its way out, and things are shifting right now as we speak. So that's something I actually wanted to ask her about, but I didn't have time, because she has literally a report. She had a report to do at 2:00. So such is life. But her analysis was great. And a lot of people, are pretty disappointed in Lula for what he said. I don't know. Look, my thing is like, Lucy said something earlier. I gotta find it, but she said, all these people who are talking about they're disappointed in, I'm paraphrasing, all these people who are talking about they're disappointed in Lula, but she said Lula was always like this. Actually, let me share this really quick, because I think this is really important. So shout out to Margaret Kimberly before I move on, because I think this is really good to put into context about Lula. She says, Lula is asking for new elections and a coalition in Venezuela. Did he have a coalition with Bolsonaro? No, and he shouldn't have. Despite the U.S. soft coup, which put him in jail, he's a fake leftist. F him. Remember what he did to Haiti. Let's go into this because Lula's not as, good as a lot of people think. So this is out of Black Agenda Report, Brazil's Haitian training ground. It says Brazil is setting up for a runoff election between right-wing President Jair Bolsonaro and leftist former President Lula da Silva. So this was actually written in 2022. So it says while Lula received the majority of the votes, he did not receive 50% of the votes needed to avoid a runoff. Bolsonaro performed better than expected. So here's what it says. It says there's a great hope placed on Lula win, particularly for those hoping for the leftist trend and the Americas to continue. But support for Lula should also include recognition of some of his problematic decisions when he was president, if only to ensure that they are not repeated. One of the more under-discussed actions by Lula during his presidency was the agreement to allow Brazil to lead the international military occupation of Haiti, euphemistically called the peacekeeping act. The U.S., France, and Canada orchestrated a coup d'etat against the country's democratically elected president in 2004. So it says the occupation, a Chapter 7 deployment of a UN stabilizing military force to Haiti, was brutal and wreaked havoc on the Haitian community, who had to suffer homicide. I can't talk today. Who had to suffer homicides, rapes, beatings, and cholera epidemic that killed approximately 30,000 people. Brazil's military stayed in Haiti from 2004 to 2017. Meanwhile, Haitian people are still dealing with the aftermath of that occupation, which continues under civilian control, denying themselves self-determination. As far as we know, Lula has never apologized for Brazil's prominent role in this occupation. So, before Kenya and what they're doing in Haiti, there was Brazil. And so this is part of the context that we need to realize, that Lula actually participated in an occupation in a country and helped destabilize it. I'm going to put the link to that article in the chat. But the thing is like some of these people who are in Latin America and in South America, you guys got to know who they are. Some of them really, Lula is like a Bernie Sanders. He can only go so far, but at the same time, he's still kind of holding some candle for the empire. So unfortunately, yes. Like, is it good that BRICS exists? Yes. But feels like Lula's still like keeping his toe as close to the United States as possible without actually being overtly with the US. So yeah, I just wanted to read that little bit at least. They'll get deeper into it. Margaret Kimberly and Black Agenda Report actually gets deeper into it further down in more nuance, but I think that's also really important to get into as well. Let me go into some of these other chats as well. Thank you to John Free says, how does Lula do this kind of thing if Brazil is in BRICS? That's a really good question. And part of me feels like South Africa particularly China and Russia really should pull Lula to the side and be like, hey, man, what you doing? You know, I can kind of see Modi, you know, doing this because Modi is, you know, kind of still connected to the empire too. But yeah, I think that's an important question, John. Roger says, pay close attention. She said, emerging Merc industry. Yes. See, this is one of the things that, and thank you very much for this, Roger. The problem is that a lot of us, we do not like the military industrial complex. Hell, even some people who consider themselves to be on the right, they don't like the military industrial complex because they're like, that's perpetuating war, right? And a lot of people now are saying, well, we don't want to be part of this war machine. And they know that we're, you know, they're sending our young people across the world to die and be cannon fodder, really for the corporations. Even people on the right know this, and a lot of them are resisting it. Even though they still say support the troops, a lot of them don't want that either. Mix that with recruiting numbers are severely down in our military. So what is the military to do, right? So what do? Well, they hire private military to do the dirty work that they can't do, because they know if they start to do that dirty work, then we're going to look at them, whoever's president, whether it's a Democrat or Republican, and we'll be like, you caused this BS to happen. How do we know this? Well, look at George W. Bush and Barack Obama. George W. Bush killed over 1 million Iraqis. Barack Obama turned 2 wars into 7 and murdered civilians, American civilians. And so, and right now, guess what? Why do we call Joe Biden Genocide Joe? Why do we call Kamala Harris Holocaust Harris? Why do I call Donald Trump Terrorist Trump? Because they're literally carrying out and using the military to do these atrocities. So now if they actually have a private military group that's doing all this stuff, there's plausible deniability. They're saying, we don't, this is a private military group. This isn't the US government. See what I mean? So that's, you know, and now all these other ones are starting to pop up. This is really privatization of imperialism. Like, technically it already was privatized, but they were using public apparatuses in order to do it. But now it's even more privatized. It's crazy. Let's see, Mark says, secure and fair. Remember the Shadow app? Yeah, the one that was implemented by Pete Buttigieg, a Democrat. Yeah, people don't talk about it, man. That was implemented in 2020 during the 2020 Democratic primaries. I remember that. Roger says, I concur with Blue Moon. Get them out. Yep, absolutely. You know, it's kind of funny. You know, a lot of times people don't realize that our governments are really compromised by corporate interests. Mark says, every leader's feet should be held to the fire all the time. There are no heroes. So yes, I definitely agree with that there. Let me see. I know there's another one. And then we can move on to the next story. Yes. John Free says, it sounds like Lula has a bad case of castration vibration. No, you didn't, John. John. Oh my, I'm telling your mother. It afflicts liberals. They reject any powerful challenge to Western imperialism, like what China, Russia, China, and Venezuela are doing. Yeah. Yep. He lacks the intestinal fortitude. He lacks the testicular fortitude to actually stand up against Lloyd Austin, Anthony Blinken, and Joe Biden. Ultimately, that's pretty much what it is. All right, so let's move on to the next story. This is going to be a quick one. The reason why is because I want all of my fellow citizens to be aware, because really, this one's a doozy. So let's get back into it. So we're going to be talking about Social Security data breach. This affects you, me, your mama, your daddy, your grandma, your kids, your auntie, your uncle, and your best friend. It involves everybody. So all of you guys, I don't want to see that number. Now one of y'all better not leave, because this affects all of you. So there was a data breach of Social Security numbers all over the country. Everybody's got their data breached. You got your data breach. You got your data breach. You got your data breach. Everybody gets a data breach. Yay! Right? I'm being sarcastic, by the way. So let's get into this. I saw this and I shared it. And for some reason, there doesn't seem to be that big of an outrage on social media. I'm like, wait a minute. Why isn't everybody talking about this? This is big. This is... Honey, baby, sweetie child, we got to talk about this. Let's get into it. All right.
And a cybersecurity company sounding the alarm about the safety of your personal information. It comes from what may be the worst data breach ever, one reportedly that's resulted in the theft of the Social Security numbers of every American. According to a federal class action lawsuit, a hacking group claims to have stolen the personal information of nearly 3 billion people and released most of that data for free online. Let's bring in cybersecurity expert Michael Kaiser for more.
Hang on. Hackers stole every single Social Security number and information of every American. That means 99% of all y'all that are watching me right now that are US citizens, your data has just been stolen. My data has just been stolen. Rome's data has been stolen. Nick's data has been stolen. Sab's data has been stolen. Everybody's data. People you hate, people you love, everybody's data has been stolen. Here's my question. Hackers, y'all could have went after the big banks. Y'all could have deleted everybody's debt. Y'all could have did something beneficial for the poor people, and yet you do this? Come on, guys. Why you hitting us under crossfire, huh? I mean, look, and people will go, "Oh, you're promoting, theft." And it's like, no, like you could have did it. You could have did it to Peter Thiel. You could have did it to Elon. You could have took the Social Security information from Bill Gates. Why do you gotta go after all of us? Well, I'm broke. I'm poor, man. At least go after the whales. Do your Captain Ahab thing and go after them. Why you gotta come after all of us? Right? It feels like collective punishment. It doesn't feel right, right? Go after the people responsible for the system being the way it is. Because they're the ones who actually stole from all of us. Don't go after the rest of us. What you got to do with it? Anywho, hackers, y'all need to do better, man. Y'all could have at least canceled the rent for everybody or something. Anyway.
More. Michael, what do we know about this reported breach, how it might have happened, and how concerned we should all be?
Yeah, I think there's a few things that people need to pay attention to here. How the data was stolen is not 100% clear, but we know that this data was stolen in vast quantities. And I think the concern people have to have is around that not only the volume of data, that's obviously, billions of records, but also what's in that data and what was stolen. And so we know that social security numbers were included, telephone numbers were included, home addresses, date of birth. These are really critical pieces of a person's identity that can be put together and used in a lot of different nefarious ways.
So this is what makes it so bad, is that they know where you live. They got your phone number. They got your date of birth. They got pretty much a lot of sensitive information that could be used to identify you when accessing different accounts. This could be your bank accounts. This could be used to access, taking out loans in your name. It could be access for so many different things. It could be access to clean your accounts out, take out your life savings. I mean, somebody can get a job in your name. They could take out credit cards, right? Ruin you, essentially. And so this is why I think it's such a big deal. But for some reason, it's not making the rounds I think it should. And the thing is, it's not that we should be afraid. It's that my question is, why hasn't there been a really good contingency in place to make sure this doesn't happen? Like, for instance, this is really safeguarding the financial security of every single American. Shouldn't that be as heavily guarded as, let's say, the Pentagon, the NSA, right? Can a hacker actually get into Homeland Security? No. Why? Because it's about the security. But what about our financial security here in the United States? What about us? And I thought about it. It dawned on me. Well, if people need extra security, what are they going to have to do? They're going to have to go to private companies in order to help them secure their information. Meaning, private corporations are going to make bank now because everybody's social security number has been compromised. So all these little companies that advertise, especially on MSNBC and Fox News and CNN, and they're especially going to be going after seniors. Well, there was this data breach, so you guys are going to need to secure your account. So to secure your account, you guys are going to have to contact us so that we can help monitor your accounts and your credit information so that you won't be a victim of identity theft. Guess what? Guaranteed, a lot of YouTube channels are going to start using sponsors that are stated to protect your identity. And guess what? They're going to be doing these sponsors on these different channels within the next week or so. This segment was sponsored by, and then NordVPN or some other, protection website, right? I'm just saying that, I'm not saying anything against NordVPN. I'm just using their name as an example. But these different companies are going to be, sponsoring these different YouTube shows and YouTube channels in order for you to go, well, you need to protect yourself. You need to protect, your identity. So, use my link and you'll get 20% off your first year. I'm sorry to put my tinfoil hat on, but when you're an anti-capitalist, you start to see this stuff down the line. And that's what I see, right? And my thing is like the United States, you guys, You guys allowed this to happen? How are you so careless with this? Or were you trying to prevent this? Let's continue.
Well, and so what are the implications here? Because when you talk about our social security numbers, our dates of birth, this is the kind of information that we use for pretty much everything, right? For a credit card, to verify our medical information, you name it.
Yeah, your social security number is an identifier, right? And actually, people might be surprised to know your phone number now is an identifier too, since most of us are now attached to individual phone numbers on our cell phones, not like the old days. So I think there are some concerns there around how these are used. There is some good news in this, in the sense that, it used to be that your social security number was on your driver's license and was on your medical card. And a lot of that stuff's been washed out of the system in order to prevent abuse. But these data can be used against you to open accounts, to try to reset accounts, to try and get into accounts that are existing. And that's a concern for everyone.
So, Michael, what can we do about it? I saw a post on social media about doing a credit freeze. Are there other tips? Is that advisable? And are there other tips, things you can do to protect yourself right now?
Yeah, there are. And I think, let's just also take the big picture here. They stole so many billions of records that, you have to look and see what your risk really is, right? There's no way they can exploit 2.9 billion, records against all of us and conduct all these activities. So there's some good news there. Certainly, a credit freeze could be important, especially.
Hang on. They can't exploit everybody. I bet you those dudes are watching going, challenge accepted. Like that's supposed to be some type of comfort for us. Well, they stole 3 billion numbers, so they can't exploit all of us. It's like, guaranteed there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be harmed by this. A lot of people. It's not some, well, your chances of winning the lottery are 1 in 300 million. It's not like that, dude. It's just like they're trying to make it like, well, the odds of being struck by lightning is this much to this much. Like, this still doesn't bring me that much comfort in a lightning storm. It doesn't. And then on top of it, my question still remains, when somebody's saying something like this, what was the actual contingencies in place to make sure that stuff like this doesn't happen? Everybody's social security number is on the dark web now? Y'all, some bullshit. Because Edward Snowden was like, oh yeah, they can get access to pretty much anybody. If y'all can get access to everybody through the NSA, through Homeland Security, all this stuff, y'all can get our information, y'all can spy on us. And yet you can't keep our social security numbers secure? Like I said, I am not boo-boo the fool. I was born at night, but not last night. You mean to tell me that a government with one of the most secure digital apparatuses in the world can't use that same security in a different part of the government for when it comes to our identity and information and finances? they can't use the same security measures? This trips me out. This is just like how the federal government will tell you, oh, this is your information for Social Security, but then you go to the Medicare office and they're like, oh, we need you to submit your Social Security information. And I'm like, wait a minute. Can't Medicare and Social Security talk to each other and give each other that information? Why in the world do I have to submit information from one department of the federal government to another part of the federal government, even though you both are part of the federal government? Why in the world do I need to do that? The same thing is true. If you guys have this immensely intricate cybersecurity for the NSA, for Homeland Security, for ICE, and all these other different parts of the federal government, but yet you guys don't have the same apparatuses for the Social Security Administration? What the hell are you telling me right now? You guys don't share the same type of security that protects our identities? Jesus.
For people who aren't, maybe trying to get credit all the time right now, because the credit fees means you have to open up your credit every time you want to, if you're trying to apply for a mortgage or some kind of new account that requires a credit check. I think, doing the basics here is actually the most important piece. There are things like, most of the password managers people use now, or Google has this as well. You can go out and see if your information has been lost, on the dark web. You should be using strong authentication on your own account. So making sure that, wherever possible, you're not just using a password to access your accounts, because that makes you vulnerable. And, trying to get into account, if you have something, a multi-factor authentication using something like a security key or these new pass keys that are quite available now, you can really protect accounts from being hacked.
All right, Michael Kaiser, great to have you. Thank you.
It makes me think about this, and maybe this is the socialist part of me. But number one, be more vigilant about your identification. Now you're gonna have to check your credit reports more often, which which also can arbitrarily lower your credit score now. So unfortunately, you're going to have to get credit reports more often. I think the last time I got a credit report, oh gosh, it had to be like 6-7 years ago where I actually checked my credit. Maybe longer than that. It probably may have been a decade, because, well, my credit is shit. So what's the point of even checking it? But my thing is if we had a system that was more geared towards protecting the citizens the way it's supposed to, then we wouldn't have to worry about this. Also, if we didn't have a system that actually exploited people and caused people to be desperate, then maybe, just maybe, we wouldn't have this many type of hackers that are actually trying to game the system in order to be able to increase their station in life. If housing was guaranteed, if healthcare was guaranteed, if all these different things that are human rights really were guaranteed, then how many people who are hackers would feel motivated to actually steal other people's data so that they can actually pay for their rent or their mortgage, or pay for their car, or pay for their healthcare? It would actually lower the possibility of that happening. I'm not saying it would eliminate it. I'm not saying that, but it would definitely lower the amount of people who are driven to do things like hacking and harming innocent people. Because the system pushes people to exploit because they're being exploited. And that's why the system needs to change. Yep, I just connected this to socialism. Absolutely, because the thing is that it is an issue of people's material needs. And hackers know if their material needs not being met, then guess what they're going to have to do? They're going to have to harm some other people digitally through ones and zeros in order so that they don't end up out on the street. So when you talk about things like housing as a human right, implementing universal housing, implementing things like a nationalized healthcare system, implementing things like making sure that everybody has food as a human right and clean water as a human right, you're really not only safeguarding yourselves, you're safeguarding yourselves from being victimized by other people who are victims of the system. You're feeding the dogs that would eat the dog in this world. So it's no longer a dog eat dog world because that dog is actually being fed. So they don't eat the other dog. So then the other dog isn't victimized by the dog that's starving. That's the point. And so now we all have to be more vigilant about our social security numbers, more vigilant about identity theft, all because of a system that really doesn't regard you or me, but they will protect the hell out of corporations. So yeah, that happened. It's wild because, you know, people are joking about it. They're, you know, I posted a link about this on Twitter, and people were like, "Oh, there's not that many social security numbers, so it's not serious." I'm like, there's social security numbers that haven't been used yet. That look, some of those social security numbers haven't been used yet because you don't have a kid yet. But when your kid is born, they're automatically given a social security number. Why? Because now it's on them. How many of your kids' identities will be stolen? A lot of people aren't talking about that either. Imagine how many people who are trying to buy a house this will mess up. Or somebody's trying to rent. Because a lot of places that rent, they do credit checks. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, here it is. Because I first saw this last week. Let me see. Let's enlarge this a little bit. It says lawsuit claims billions of individuals impacted by massa data hack. It says the alleged breach occurred in April. So, in April, we're just now finding out about it, though, right? Hold up. Wait. This hack happened in April. Where was this announcement? April, June, July, August. 4 months? Y'all took 4 months to let us know that our identities have been stolen. Four months. By the way, this article is not 4 months old. They said an alleged breach occurred in April. The hacker group US DoD perpetuated it. Now, this group, so now this article came out 3 days ago. But this happened 4 months ago. So it says the US DOD claimed to have stolen 2.9 billion people's records from national public data and then sold the information on the dark web. The stolen information allegedly includes social security numbers, full names, current and past addresses for the past 3 decades. For the past 3 decades. So if you have a loved one that died between now and 30 years ago, their identity was stolen too. So even my grandmother who passed away last year, her information is also on the dark web too. Her social security number. So it's not just people who's still alive, it's people who's died and yet to be born. It says what to do if your social security number was stolen. So, of course, your social security number has been stolen, which pretty much everybody's has. Social Security Administration cannot do anything if someone uses your information. Hold up. The Social Security Administration cannot do anything if someone uses your information. Why? Why can't they? This is crazy, man. Dear God. It says the first step after finding out your social security number was stolen is go to the Federal Trade Commission's identitytheft.gov to file a personal recovery plan, which will include instructions on recovering your identity. You will also need to contact the Internal Revenue Service to prevent anyone from using your social security number to file a tax return or to get a job using your number. Hang on. This is another gripe I have. Why should I, when I go to identitytheft.gov and report that my identity is stolen, that information isn't automatically submitted to the Internal Revenue Service, which is also a federal part of the federal government? Why in the world do I have to submit that information when they can just communicate with each other in order to find out, oh, well, this person's identity has been stolen. Okay, hand it over to us. We'll take it from there. Why do I now have to go from one website of the federal government to another website of the federal government to submit the same information that I already did to the federal government? This is bullshit. This gets on my damn nerves. And this is why we talk about changing the system that is from corporate to one that is for the people. Because the thing is that if you actually had a government that was for the people, then they would actually make sure that these things are interconnected so that you don't have to do all this legwork. Did you know in Japan, you do not have to do your taxes? The government actually does it for you in Japan. Why aren't we having that done for us? Gosh. All this legwork for what? Says you will need to contact the Internal Revenue Service to prevent anyone from using your social security number to file a tax return or to get a job using your number. You could have linked the information to be submitted from identitytheft.gov to the IRS. You could do that. Y'all got the smarts to do that. If I can think of it, you guys can execute it. It says you should also contact the Social Security Administration if you believe the Social Security number has been stolen so the administration can help look at your statements. Why isn't this all connected? And you know what the funny part is? A lot of times they'll make you do all this extra legwork because sometimes they're counting on you to just give up and just let things be. This is why applying for government programs is so complex, because they want you to give up, because they don't actually want to put out the money in order to help you. Why? Because you have two parties in government that really don't give a shit about you. And so they want to make things as complex as they can so that if you try to do anything social welfare involved, well, if they can discourage you from utilizing it, then they will. Even though you're paying money into the system. And I don't care if you're unemployed, you're still paying money into the system, even when you buy stuff, because there is a sales tax that implements into it. This is why we need to change the system. This is why we talk about organizing. This is why we talk about doing mutual aid in order to circumvent the system, in order to have something better for everybody. And, shout out to Savvy Sabs. She's actually doing her mutual aid event right now in Boston for kids back to school. But this is why we have to change the system as much as we possibly can, because we actually need a people-centered system. And once we get a people-centered system, a lot of the issues that I was talking about, they'll either go away or they'll be greatly reduced, which is something I look forward to. So please keep an eye on your social security numbers and your identification, and try to be as vigilant as you can in order to make sure that you are protected. Because if this system ain't looking out for you the way that they should, you're going to have to do it yourself. And also check on the information for your elderly people in your lives, your loved ones, as well as the people who may be disabled and have intellectual disabilities, because those also may be some of the biggest victims too. Go ahead and give the stream a like. Thank you very much. This story was a doozy, man. I was irritated, man. Ooh, this story irritated me because I'm just like, why in the world are you guys allowing this crap to happen? Human Rights for All says, how do you know it wasn't done by the government? I don't know. NK, thank you very much for the super chat. Says, so glad there's been such a huge push to privatize public information and public services for the last 50 years. Yeah, I sense some sarcasm from you. Yeah, it's like, thank God now our information is in the hand of private corporations. Yeah, thank you very much. Jima says, K-High folks are the most xenophobic people that I have to deal with. They are just as repulsive as the other side. Yeah, I've been noticing that. Thank you very much for that. Oh. Let me see. I thought I saw another one. You know what? Hang on. Because I want to address something. And it's nothing against hang on. It's nothing against this person at all. I just wanted to address the concept, right? So Zaldivar says you can check through Credit Karma and says it won't affect your credit score. The concept of credit scores is bullshit. And it's also racist. Go ahead. Google credit score and racism and just go down that rabbit hole. I'm telling you. The thing is like the fact that we actually have to have a credit score. By the way, I'm actually older than the FICO score. I'm older than that. I know I look good. But that's the problem. Is that we should not have to have this score really. And what is it? To measure, how consistently you are at making sure to pay your bills. But a lot of these bills that we have to be consistent with are bills for things that really should be a human right. regardless of whether you have money or not. And then you have TransUnion, Equifax, and what's the other credit reporting agency? TransUnion, Equifax, and there's a third one. I forgot. But these aren't government bureaucracies. These are private corporations. They make money off of you being able to report your credit. That don't sound right to me. Why is that privatized? Why is our credit system privatized? Your credit system is not used when it comes to you getting any type of assistance or any type of use from the federal government or the state government or local. So therefore, why does it exist? Why do we have this system that is exclusively created by finance capital exist? Alfred Tolkien says, I went to China and they don't have a social credit system. Yeah. You can talk to Carl Jard, Danny Haifeng, Jing, I always mess up her name. Jing Jailing. They'll all tell you, yeah, that's BS. That doesn't actually exist. Yeah. But yeah, so Saldivar, that wasn't a jumping on you. I was just talking about the concept of credit scores and stuff like that. It really shouldn't be, to be honest with you, because we survived this long without them. And why do we have to have them now? Vicky says, not sure if these are US hackers. Who knows? But, you know, still the safeguard should have been in place against this. Benetter says, and if you didn't have an economic system predicated on debt, constant inflation and consumer credit to maintain any of the basics for life of the majority. Yeah, I think that's also a really good point. It wouldn't be necessary. Charles K said most hackers are from other countries, not the US. You know what? And it's that very notion as the reason why I also say that we need to change this system, because our foreign policy is causing people to be desperate in other countries because of what our countries do to them. Because I have a lot of doubt that any of these hackers are from places like France, Belgium, Iceland, Norway, Sweden, the UK, Italy. I have doubt that I actually think that the majority of these hackers, if they do exist, they're probably from the global south, and they're probably suffering because of what our country and the West has been doing to them. You know, it just sucks, but that's honestly what I think. Kathy says, but we have to send billions to Ukraine, Israel, so they can have those free. Right? Gonzo says systems never change, people do. Systems can change, but it's up to the people to do it. I was talking to some members of the Orlando chapter yesterday. You know, we hang out to build community. And one of the things I said was the quote that everybody likes to say is the arc of the universe is long and it bends towards justice. My question is, who bends it? It's us. We have to bend that arc. So when it comes to implementing more just systems, it has to come through us. It's not going to come any other way. Queer Black Socialista says, what if you have no or negative net worth or bad credit like me? I feel attacked, Queer Black Socialista. Why are you attacking me, girl? Just kidding. But does it matter? Yeah, because the problem is that they could make things worse for you. Like they, you know, there are payday lenders that you can have a credit score of like 420. Kind of interesting I use that number. But you could be like 410, 415, right? Let's say you have that type of credit score, right? Which is essentially, for all intents and purposes, bad credit, right? But there are payday lenders who would still loan you money at extremely high interest rates with that credit score. And then that person has that money injected into their account, but it's under your credit. And then guess what happens? When it comes time to pay back, who's on the hook for it? With that extremely high interest rate. I remember my mother took out a loan out of desperation because we're broke, we're poor. And these payday lenders, oh my God, they're loan sharks. They charged my mother almost 500% interest. I didn't stutter. Almost 500% interest. These people will take your social security number, no matter if you got bad credit, and they will take out these loans, and then they will screw you even if you have bad credit. So, even if you got bad credit or no credit, that's why I also said, look out for your kids' identities too. Your grandkids, your nieces, your nephews' identities. I don't care if your kid was just born. You got to look out for their identity, for theft for them too. All right, so I got to get going because I got to make these chicken wings. So yeah, says income taxes are only a century old. There were property taxes, but touching income was seen as oppression and theft. Income taxes were passed under the guise of taxing the rich who wrote the code. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. Let me. Thank you, Rondo. Yes, I think the credit bureau we're looking for is Experian. Yeah. So Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. Those are the 3 credit reporting agencies. And I'll be honest with you, if they can consolidate and be just one so they can monopolize on it, they would. Yeah. So they'd be coming in with the facts. Says, yes, the Fair Isaac Corporation, FICO, created the first consumer credit score in 1989. FICO collaborated with 3 national credit bureaus, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, to commodify us via numbers. Yep. Wow. Chima says, too many diaspora Haitian platforms in Miami and Paris are actually calling for the U.S. to take over and even bomb Haiti. What? What in the imperialist ass kissing is this? That would be like me begging the United States and the West to militarily put boots on the ground in Niger and Burkina Faso in order in Mali in order to take them back over to save the people over there. Like, no, bro, keep your grubby little hands out of their country and let them run their country the way they want. Oh my God. Coons among us, coons everywhere. Thank you very much for that information, Chima, though. I appreciate it. Ah. These silly Negroes. Oh my gosh, crazy. Roger says, you got time for one more story, Florida. Roger, I'm trying to leave. I'm trying to go. Can I cover it on Tuesday? Oh, man. I talk too much, too. I talk myself into a corner. Roger, can I cover that on Tuesday? I got to go, man. Plus, I'm hungry. All I had was a smoothie today, right? That stuff done went right through me. I'm not trying to be graphic or anything like that. You know, not in that way. Well, technically, yes. I'm gonna have to cover it Tuesday, bro. I'm sorry, Raj. I know you have been submitting me some really good stories to cover too, by the way. But yeah, and I do want to cover another story about Florida too. Oh, I gotta do my stay tuned for my channel because I'll be uploading the Amendment 2 that I actually did last week. I still haven't done it. But Amendment 2 will be uploaded. I already did it last week for my live stream, but we'll be covering that. This week on Tuesday, I'll be covering Amendment 3, which is the ballot initiatives that we're going to be having in November of this year to vote on. So we'll be covering that. So go ahead and stay tuned to my channel for Amendment 2. I'll be uploading that today. I'm probably going to try to upload it right after the stream. And then Amendment 3 will be this week as well. So we're going to be doing that. I just remembered. Okay, hang on. Let me share this as well. I want to give a huge shout out to my sister from another mister. Because Savvy Sabs is on the ground today. And then Nick will be on the ground tomorrow. This is so exciting. Okay, all right. So you guys are going to see Savvy Sabs on the ground doing it for the kids. She's doing it for the kids. All right, boy, I can't wait to see what Nick got tomorrow. Well, it's going to be fun. Nick better at least record this because I want to show all this off. All right, take it away, Sabs.
Hello. I want to show you guys what we're doing so far. So we flip this around. Okay. So we got like the water bottles. Right now we're trying to separate everything. Color pencils, the index cards that they need, crayons, the bags. Actually, let me zoom out a little bit. We have the folders. We're separating the folders by color, and I'll show you. Hold on. We also have shoes as well, if kids need shoes. I think we also have socks. Are these the wide wool? Oh, look, we did those already. And then we brought lollipops, so thanks for popping in. These are the single subject notebooks here. And then are these the earbuds? Earbuds. Pencil sharpeners. Just showing everybody what we got. What are these?
These are super compacted backpacks.
These are the book bags. So it's kind of cool how they can compact them. And then I want to show you over here. We walk over here because we have the barbecue. The catering people were on time, which is awesome. I love when people are on time. But over here, the catering is set up over here. I'm going to have to do something. This table was empty. I need to put something there. Anyway, all that stuff. Shout out to Blue Ribbon Barbecue doing the damn thing. And I think Charlie put a sign. Charlie, you put the sign out. Oh, there's the sign. All right. I want to show you the sign that Charlie made. It's so cute. There it is. So he took the picture from my Keep Up the Fight shirt. That's supposed to be me, but it also looks like a little kid, so it's funny. So back to school barbecue, RBN, Boston chapter, free school supplies, free food and drinks today at noon. So that's cute too. Yeah.
Oop, I was muted. I am so proud of Savvy. I am so proud of Nick. Savvy, her event was about 3 hours ago, so she's probably just now wrapping up. So, which is great. Nick is going to be tomorrow, and then he is going to be on his way to Chicago. Him and Rome are going to Chicago. It is going to be a banger week. I am so excited for everybody in RBN. So yeah, and then of course 2 weeks ago I had my mutual aid event here in Orlando with the RBN chapter members. That was a wonderful, successful turnout. So we were able to give the care packages, toiletry care packages to 100 people who are unhoused, over 100 people actually. So we were actually able to do that. And so I'm glad we were able to do that. And we're also planning for the next action. We're actually raising money for the next action. So if you guys would like to, you guys can actually donate at through Cash App at $Orlando RBN. If you would like to, we're trying to do that and do more for our communities because, well, you know what? Like they always say, we save us. And so that's what we're trying to do here in Orlando. So if you guys would like to, you guys can also donate. The link is also in the chat as well if you guys would like to. But yes, the Orlando chapter mutual aid. And we're fundraising to raise money for grocery gift cards for our unhoused neighbors because that's one of the number one things they were asking for is food. So we're going to try to do the best we can. And I also want to, we're trying to see about teaming up with other mutual aid groups in Orlando so that we can learn from them as well as help them out and increase the solidarity among the workers and the poor people so that we can actually grow a new system out of this old one. So I am just so proud of everybody for doing the damn thing on the ground. It has been a wonderful week to see. So with that being said, I just want to thank everybody for tuning in. Let me just check to see if we have any more super chats or anything like that. Oh, and I wanted to address this too. Chima says, I am a struggling private chef. If I could afford to travel to Florida, I would cook for you and your family. That is deeply sweet and very kind of you. I appreciate it. As somebody that actually went to culinary school, I'd probably be tempted to join you in the kitchen. But thank you so very much. My mom loves seafood, by the way, just letting you know. So yeah. So let me check the Rockfin side. Looks like, oh, we got Indy left on the Rockfin side. Good to see Indy. All right, Indy Left. They're doing great work at Indy Left. If you guys have not, you guys can go ahead and give them a sub on their channel. They're doing good work on the ground and talking about stuff that a lot of people don't talk about too. So it's great. And oh, let me check the Rumble side to see if we have any Rumble rants before I head on out because I want to make sure that I don't miss any Rumble rants. Looks like we're pretty good. So, all right. Yeah. Okie dokie. All right. And yeah, Tim, it's all good. It's all good. I'm always late anyway. Zoya says Chicago will be live streamed for those who can't make it, and keep your eyes peeled for parallel protests. Yes, and in fact, one of the members of the Orlando chapter of RBN is actually going to be in Chicago too. So they'll get to meet, Nick and Rome, and then it's just going to be a beautiful thing. I'm just so excited. Yeah. Let me see. Zoya says, everyone get into Discord and organize yourselves, comrades. You can do it. Rome, JB, Savvy, and Nick. Dude, thank you so much for that, Zoya. Lorshek says Venezuela built 5 million nearly free homes in 10 years. I got to do more research on Venezuela, because Venezuela sounds based, man. Woo. And Brian says Venezuela is a good place despite the U.S. That's one place I want to visit. I want to visit Venezuela, as well as I want to visit Cuba too. Cuba, DPRK, Venezuela. We were talking about that last night. Yeah, I want to visit a lot of those places. Anyways, so I'm gonna head on out because I'm kind of above my time, but I just want to finish off with the shout out to patrons on Patreon. We'll close with that. But thank you so very much to everybody for tuning in. Look, stay tuned this week because the DNC National Convention is happening this week. Keep your eyes peeled on RBN. Keep your eyes peeled on RBN, Savvy Savs, and JB Font Channel. We will be covering a lot of what's going on. And in fact, you know what? I'm gonna do a live coverage of the DNC convention Tuesday night. I'm gonna go live on Tuesday night, and I'm gonna do a live reaction to some of the speeches and things like that on Tuesday night for the DNC convention. So that's gonna be an interesting subject to cover. And people from the RBN Orlando chapter, look, if y'all want to join in, we can have that conversation. But thank you so very much to everybody for joining in. Thank you for being here. Water your plants, water yourselves, leave the world better than you found it. Do all the things if you got them, right? And also, when people tell, it's great point from Katie Lewis from the Orlando chapter. He said this yesterday. If somebody comes from a country that's being ravaged by U.S. sanctions and imperialism, and they come from that country and then they're dogging their own country without actually acknowledging the harm that the United States government has actually done, you may want to take everything that they have to say with a big ass grain of salt. Okay? I escaped communism. Right. You escaped because the United States sanctions were actually ravaging your country. That's actually what it was doing. But anyways. All right. So everybody, take care and listen to anti-imperialist voices because duh. And I will see y'all in the next one. Deuces, Bruces, mwah, forehead kisses. I'll catch y'all in the next one.